Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone. We are from Group 10. We are going to explain about literature in the Caroline Age. Okay, here going to the definition. The word Carolines comes from the name Charles, King of England from 1625 to 1649. During this period, poetry was divided into three categories. The first, metaphysical, cavalier, and Puritan. The Carolines era was dominated by growing religious, political, and social discord between the king and his supporters. Termed the Royalist Party and the Parliamentarian opposition that evolved in response to particular aspects of Charles' rules.
The history is the Caroline Age. During this period, there was a civil war that divided people into fractions. The English Civil War was fought between the supporters of the king, known as the Roundheads. The crisis began when James I, who reclaimed royalty rights from the Parliamentary Act and ignored the importance of Parliament. Puritans also influenced England from the reign of James I and played a powerful force in social life at the time. The hostility and cruelty that began in 1642 ended with the expulsion of Charles I in 1649 and the great political instability of 1649 until 1660 under Oliver Cromwell. But this chaos ended with the restoration of King Charles II in 1660.
Okay, now I will explain about the type of poetry in the Caroline Age. First, we have metaphysical. Metaphysical poetry is marked by the use of elaborate figurative language, original conceits, paradoxes, and philosophical topics. Important writers of this movement included George Herbert, Andrew Marvell, and Henry Vaughan. John Donne is the best-known metaphysical poet. His poetry is often cited as the best example of the movement. About metaphysical poetry, it was at its peak during the 17th century in England and continental Europe. The movement explored everything from irony to philosophy and conceits. It is for its complex and original conceits that most metaphysical poems are noted. During this period, poets relaxed their previously strict use of matter and explored new ideas. And the next type of poetry in the Caroline Age is Cavalier. The Cavalier poets were a group of writers from the 17th century in England. They are generally defined by their class and the fact that they originated from that which supported Charles I during the English Civil War. Sometimes the Cavalier poets were looked down on because they created the art that King Charles was interested in and often worked in his service. Poets of this movement include Robert Herrick, Thomas Carew, and Richard Lovelace. And then Cavalier poetry is straightforward yet refined. Many of the poems centered around sensual, romantic love and also the idea of carpe diem, which means to seize the day. To the Cavalier poet, enjoying life was far more important than following moral codes. And Cavalier poetry mirrored the attitudes of courtiers. The meaning of cavalier is showing arrogant or offhand disregard, dismissive, or carefree and nonchalant. And that is describe the attitude of cavalier poets. In addition, the Cavalier poets concentrated on the pleasure of the moment. The Cavaliers were simple, being more appropriate to say what they meant in clear terms, and the Cavalier poet wrote short, refined verses, and the tone of Cavalier poetry was generally easygoing. And the last type of the poetry.
Okay, we're going to discuss about example of the literature in Caroline era. In this era, there are three types of the poetry because the famous literature in this era is poetry. So yeah, the first one is the type poetry is metaphysical. Yeah, in this type, we choose The Flea by John Donne. The stanza of this poetry and the stanza one of this poetry is sounds mark but this flea and mark and this how little that which thou deniest me is. It shocked me first and now shock thee. And in this flea our two bloods mingle be. Thou knowest that this cannot be said, a sin nor shame nor loss of maidenhead. Yet this enjoy before it woo, and pampered swells with one blood made of two, and this, alas, is more than we would do. The poet in this poem, John Donne, asks his beloved to observe the flea carefully and mark that what she denies to him is not of much significance. The flea shocked her blood and then shocked his. In this way, in its body, their respective blood are mixed up. She must acknowledge that this mingling of their blood in the body of the flea is neither sin nor shame or nor loss of virginity. But the flea has enjoyed her without any wooing or courtship, and its body is now swelled up with the enjoying of their respective blood, which now mingles in its body. The body regrets that such direct enjoyment and consummation is not possible for human beings. The second one is the type of cavalier type of poetry. So here we choose um, poetry by Robert Herrick, and the title is "To the Virgins to Make Much of the Time." Okay, so the stanza we take stanza one of this poetry. It sounds like gather ye rosebuds while ye may. All time is still offline, and the same flower that smiles today, tomorrow will be dying. Okay, the poem begins with the speaker stating that a woman should do everything she can while she is young to take advantage of the love others want to give to her. She will be more appreciated while she is young and beautiful. Therefore, she should gather her rosebuds or the things in life she needs before time takes over. Once time has made its mark on her, she will be lost to the happy possibilities of life. In the final section, the speaker directly tells his female listeners, his female listeners, that they need to marry as soon as possible. There is no time to waste being joy, as one might end up alone.
Okay, and the last from Puritan Poetry, Paradise Lost by John Milton. Written in blank verse and including over 10 chapters, was written in a time of immense religious flux and political upheaval. It addressed the fall of man, including the temptations of Adam and Eve by the fallen angel Satan and God's expulsion of them of the Garden of Eden. Of man's first disobedience and the fruit of that forbidden tree, whose mortal taste brought death into the world, and all our woe with loss of Eden, till one greater man restored us, and regained the blissful seat, sing heavily mused that's on the secret top of Arab or of Reynald this inspire the shepherd who first taught the chosen seed. In the beginning, how the heaven and earth rose out of chaos, or if silent hill delayed the more, and Zion broke that flood. Forced by the oracle of God, I then invoked the aid to my adventurous song, that with on middle flight intended to soar about that iron mouth, while it possessed things unattended yet in prose and rhyme. With this line, Milton begins Paradise Lost and laid the groundwork from his projects, presenting his purpose, subject, aspirations, and need for heavenly guidance. He stated that his subject will be the disobedience of Adam and Eve, whose sin allows death and pain into the world.
Okay, the last is conclusion. The Caroline Age is the age of poetry because poets wholeheartedly devoted to writing poetry. There are very few writers who tend to write plays. Poetry has been written on political, economic, social, milieu, and love aspects. Nevertheless, it is a highly productive age in terms of its creativity in literature as well as poets experimented with different styles of writings and narrative techniques which are quite successful.